How many people here have a LinkedIn profile page? Okay. When I talk to lawyers, I ask them, do you use Facebook? A lot of them do. But most professionals use LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is great. For a long time, LinkedIn was kind of not really at parity with Facebook, only because it tried to be so professional that it didn't have pictures. It did a lot of things in a very restrictive way that didn't allow it to grow. Well, it's obviously taking off now. And I would say in the last 6 months, I've seen a lot of activity from people that weren't using LinkedIn and starting to use it. So to me, LinkedIn is really starting to catch on. In the beginning, people thought of it as an online resume. And that's what I thought of it as, and that's what I used it for. So I put all the places I went to school, I put all that information on there, and then if I updated something, I updated it on LinkedIn, and that was my resume. Instead of having to sit there and constantly update it or print it out, I could have my resume online, people could access it. That was great. But the next thing that LinkedIn added was client recommendations for people who work with you. So if somebody was on LinkedIn and they hired you for something, they could post a recommendation and say, I hired Ernie, he was a great speaker, we invited him to come back. So on my LinkedIn profile page, not only do you get a resume, but then at the bottom of it, kind of like pin the tail on the donkey, people pin their recommendations there and people can see that. And I don't solicit recommendations, I just say, there's a place where you can post it, and people do. Now I get to approve them. If somebody says something horrible that I don't want up there that doesn't belong, I won't approve it. But I get the chance to approve it. I can't edit it or change anything about it, but I can approve it. So client recommendations are another reason to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is good for doing investigation. It's also good for group discussions about topics that you're interested in. So LinkedIn is definitely a powerful tool. Now this is something this is a company that LinkedIn just announced they're going to acquire, Reportive. And what Reportive does is if you use Gmail and you use Gmail in the web browser, which a lot of people use Gmail too, then what happens is when you, so here's my Gmail inbox. When Michael sent me an email talking about something that said you're ready to go, I'm checking in, I get not only the email that Michael sent me, but also shows up on the right-hand side, because I've installed the Reportive plugin, information about Michael. So pretend that I had never, this would happen whether he sent me the first email ever and I didn't have him in my contacts, it doesn't matter. It sees that he's on Facebook, but I'm not his friend on Facebook, so I'd have to add him. It's pulling his LinkedIn information, so I've got a picture of him. I can see, because he's on Twitter, I can see the last tweet that he put out. This is actually when people talked about CRM, does anybody remember that phrase? CRM, Client Relationship Management Tools? The law firm that I was at, we were contemplating buying this, like $40,000 plug-in, and what it was going to allow us to do was, I could know if Fred knew Tom, and this client, I could find out all this information. And a friend of mine who worked at a big law firm in New Orleans, was bigger than ours, I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, we never use that. And I said, well, why not? Because everybody is afraid of putting in their private information. So these companies were spending a lot of money on CRM software that was useless because it didn't get over the barrier of people actually wanting to share information. Okay, well, social media and the internet has solved that problem. And that's really what Reportive does. If people are going to put their information on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, now here's a tool you can use to collect all that information and see it. So that when somebody sends you an email out of the blue, you immediately know more than just what they said in the email. Let's see, what did they say on Twitter last week? Oh, okay, we're talking about that. Okay, what else are they doing? You right away know a lot of information about that person. I think that's pretty useful. So for those of you, and so like for example here, if I click add a friend, it will pop up and say, add Michael as a friend, and I can right from there I can add him as a friend in Facebook. Now for those of you that use Outlook and you don't want to use Gmail on the web, there's this program called Zobni, and the way to remember this is it's inbox spelled backwards. And this is another company. Yeah, it's like that's the key. The key to getting funded, as far as I can tell, when you have a new cool web thing, is to come up with a really weird spelling. And this is the weirdest spelling of all. They just completely reversed. They'll never be. That domain was available. So Zobni does the same thing. It's an Outlook plugin and provides all that functionality within Outlook. One of the problems that I frequently encounter as a lawyer, we set a deposition, and now every case, if it's a dog bite case, there's going to be 10 lawyers. There's no such thing as a simple lawsuit, right? So every lawsuit that has 3 or 4 lawyers, and you try to schedule a deposition for anything, it becomes a huge nightmare because everybody's busy and you got to send all these emails back and forth. Okay, so the solution to that problem, or any problem like that, you have to get a group of people to agree on a date, is a service like Doodle. And there's lots of these services, this is just one of them. So what Doodle does is it says, okay, let's say you're going to schedule an event. In this case, we'll call it lunch. My friend Dan says, okay, he's scheduling it for lunch. He says, meet me for lunch. The title is lunch. Then he picks dates that he would be available for lunch. And he says, okay, here they are. These are the dates and these are the times. So here are the options. Now he sends it out. And people, and this is a grid. So my friend Jeff has already said green, 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 green for those dates and times. Now it's up to me to pick the times. Now obviously I can't pick the times from Jeff's not available because that's not going to work. So I'm going to have to pick from what's available there. And what's interesting about this kind of thing is that it rewards the people who respond quickly. Because the faster you respond, the more control you have over the scheduling of the dates. And at the very end, the last person comes in, and he was probably going to say he couldn't do something, but his excuse was he was playing golf that day. And if it's an important meeting, he's going to say, you know what, I can see the only time these other people can meet is this, fine, I'm going to do that. So it's using technology to put social pressure on people and solve a problem in a way that I think is pretty elegant. So that's the video. Doodle.com. Let's talk a little bit about travel. Travel is one of those things some of us do a lot, some of us do a little bit, but those of us who even do it a little bit, it's kind of frustrating because there's a lot of little pieces of information and little problems that you have to solve when you plan a trip. First problem, I'm going to decide, I'm going to go from here to there, and what are my choices? This service called Hipmunk, which, again, with the weird name, you got Chipmunk, but it's called Hipmunk. And Hipmunk, what it does is you put in, it's very simple, it's like Google. You just put in where are you going, where are you departing from, are you returning, and if so, what's your return date, you pick those 2 things, and you say show me, and you can filter by price, by duration, but the best filter is the agony filter. And what the agony filter does is show you in a graphic way how much time you have and what's the simplest path. So right at the top, you can see for this trip I was talking about, let's move it over a little. So the first one is United flight with a very short layover in Denver. That one looks like it has the shortest agony problem. It's one layover, no big deal. These are taking longer, they're not at the best times. So in one fell swoop, you can see in a graphic way which flight you want to pick. Once you decide which flight you want to pick, it'll shunt you over to the airline website. Of course, it doesn't use Southwest. Why? Because Southwest doesn't participate in that. So you have to go to Southwest on your own. Now let's say you pick your flight and you say, okay, great, I'm there, I've got the flight, but now what I want to know is, where do I want to sit on that plane? Because on that plane, there are probably some good places to sit and some bad places to sit. Seat Guru will show you where you want to sit. It will show you drawbacks, where the block seats are, where the emergency exit is, where the overhead TVs are, all this kind of stuff. And in the graphic, you can see exactly where you want to be sitting. It will also show you things like basic power, internet, food, all that stuff. Graphic, easy to understand way, what kind of flight you're going to be on. Next step, so you've booked your flight and you're ready to roll. So what the first thing that happens is you get an email saying, here's your flight, confirming you got it. How many people here know about TripIt.com? Okay, good. And how many people here who know about TripIt.com love TripIt.com? Awesome. Somebody kept their hand there. TripIt.com is the most, it is awesome. It is the best thing. It's free. And if you want to use the higher version that will give you text alerts when your flight's delayed, that's great. That's like $45 a year. But the free version is all you need. And basically what you do is you tell TripIt, okay, I'm going to make this trip, and then when the email comes from whatever airline, including Southwest, you simply forward that email to plans@tripit.com. They know your email address because you've given them that. And then it creates an itinerary as it did for me here. So it says, it'll look at the email and go, okay, everything related to that time frame that I get now is part of that same trip. So I forward the plane reservation, the car rental information, the hotel confirmation, all that goes to trip. All I do is forward it. It takes me like 1 second, and it builds an itinerary. So now when I'm going to take this trip, instead of having to dig through my email, I open up my iPhone or my Android, whatever kind of device I have, and I can see my itinerary right there, and I'm ready to roll. All the confirmation numbers are there, everything you need. So then you're on your trip, and what happens? You get these receipts. Now I am all about paperless. I don't deal with paper. I avoid it. I get rid of it as quickly as possible because it keys my ability to be efficient. So this is a service that I've tried. I don't need it because I don't travel as much, so I'm not continue to pay them. But it's definitely worth it. It's called shoebox.com. And basically what you do with Shoebox is you think of all these receipts and all those little pieces of paper you have to keep track of. You can process them in several different ways. One is, let's take the scenario, I go to my accountant with a shoebox full of stuff, and I go, here, just make sense of it. You can do that with them. You can send them all your receipts, they'll give you a pre-addressed envelope, you send it to them, they scan it, it's OCR, you can pop it into your Excel spreadsheet, whatever you need to do, but they'll take care of all that. That's one thing they'll do. The other thing that they'll do, and this is the thing I find more amazing, is if you have an iPhone or an Android or whatever, but it works really well on an iPhone, as your receipts come up, you simply take a picture of them with the camera from within the application. It sits there and it sends it off, and it's actually checked by human beings, so it's more accurate. And then after a while, it comes back, it's got the number, so it's figured out the cost of that item. So for example, you get your restaurant receipts, your hotel, whatever, it doesn't matter. They look for the number, they get the number, and then that becomes the thing they keep track of. So last time I spoke at the ABA Tech Show, I took pictures of all the receipts with my camera. Then as I was leaving, they said, okay, speak, people who spoke, send us your receipts. I simply looked at the choices, and I click, 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 click for the ones that applied. It gave me a total, it created a spreadsheet, it put the spreadsheet in the email, and I said, these are my receipts, please pay me, and I sent it. Now, I thought that was pretty amazing. Maybe you don't.
There's another site similar to that called Expensify.
Expensify, also very good. Yeah.
And you could tie it into your American Express card, and you just, after everything hits your bill, you put it into categories, and it's done, and you can send it in for invoicing as well. Right.
She was saying Expensify works with American Express. That one is all, but either one, they're both free. They're both good. They're both free up to a certain point. Then of course you get hooked, and then you want to